Well, welcome back to So There I Was. I'm your host again, Travis Womack. Today's guest is Jose Velazquez. Sorry, I just butchered that so bad. My
It's
my my,
okay.
te- my Texans friends are going to make fun of me. So Jose's a 30-year vet, retired obviously, and has an entire career of doing public affairs um, engagement for the Army and on every level there is pretty much. And you're currently the founder of Velasquez. There we go. Wow. I cannot do that today. I need more coffee. Media consulting. And so, welcome to the show, and glad to have you here, Jose.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So, man, we could dig into a whole bunch of things. It's funny because people once you get into certain jobs, you learn about certain things that you had no idea about. And I remember very well for me being a young lieutenant, like, hey, you're gonna be the public affairs officer. So, which basically was me writing little one-page things to send back to the wives and spouses and stuff when we're deployed to Dubai. Like, hey,
Mhm.
we came to work today. We didn't have a choice, but we're here, and here we dug some holes. Here's a picture, and go right.
Yeah.
All the way to when I was in the Army G1 before I retired and doing like massive communications of how do you communicate to the entire army.
Mhm.
So man, let's kind of start what got you into that. Why'd you join the army to do that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hey, I'll give you the short bio.
Yeah.
So again, thank you to you and to your audience for this opportunity. So I started in the projects and I was desperate to get into a career in broadcasting. I went to community college and failed right out of it and was working in a factory trying to figure out how do I get from here to there to work in radio and television. And there was just no clear path. And I took a chance on an Army recruiter. I went to the recruiter and said, "Do you guys have broadcasting?" And he looked through his little book back in those days. He's looking through the book and he says, "Oh my God, yeah, we got that field." He didn't
Didn't
know.
know that.
He wasn't recruiting for broadcaster. He was recruiting for infantry, of course. But this crazy kid walked in asking about broadcasting, and he knew that he had an opportunity to, of course, enlist somebody. So he looked into it. We went through the process. I was lucky enough to get selected. There was a selection process or an opportunity for me to, try and get in, and that worked out really well. I got in, and then really fast forward, I had the opportunity to work at various levels as a broadcaster under the big public affairs field. In my time in service, those 30 years, I started, just the dream, right? Playing rock and roll for soldiers all over the world
Oh yeah.
and getting paid for it. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
And then after that, I began to rise through the ranks, and understandably, you start doing more and more management stuff and
Yeah.
more serious public affairs, and that was fun. And understandably, I enjoyed that, telling the Army story through campaigns and programs. But surely, I never stopped loving being a broadcaster, which was my original love. But throughout my career, I had a chance to lead service members in various joint units and Army units, doing public affairs in the States and overseas. One of my notable jobs was being the public affairs officer for the Sergeant Major of the Army. Super fun. I traveled the world. I
Oh
left
yeah.
exhausted,
Which
and it was
what's SMA?
Sergeant Major of the Army Preston, Ken
Okay.
Preston.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So
Yeah, I left, bloodied and battered after a long few years of just traveling the planet nonstop,
oh
and
yeah.
he was just a beast. He had no scars on him at all. But I was like, man, I was beat up. I loved every second of it, but I gave all of myself to that
Oh
job,
yeah.
and I would do it all over again. And then finally, I finished my career. Thankful and honored to have been selected to be the regimental sergeant major for the public affairs enlisted force. And I spent, 3 years doing my very best to make life better for our public affairs enlisted service members. And not just the enlisted service members, but the career field overall.
Yeah.
And so I hope I had an impact. Sometimes that's decided by other people how much of an impact you had. And then I retired after 30 years. Uncle Sam said, "All right, go find something else to do."
Yeah. When'd
And
you retire?
I retired January of 2021.
Okay.
So 3 years now.
Good
Yeah.
deal. Good deal. It's
So that was it. And I mean, that was my career in somewhat of a nutshell as
yeah,
I was in the Army. And then after the Army, I started with a government job right out of the Army. It was kind of safe, and I needed safe for a little
yeah.
while. Well, I could figure out my finances. When you first get out of the military, there's so many confusing
Oh yeah.
things.
That's
And I'm
crazy.
sure you experienced that too.
Oh yeah.
And you just don't know what you know. And so an opportunity presented itself for me to work as a government civilian, and I took it.
Yeah.
And I worked with just an incredible team. I really loved it. And after my year, my boss knew that I was going to leave after a year, and he had no issue with it. Really wonderful man. And after a year, I had other aspirations. And so, I took a chance on my own business, as you noted, a public affairs consulting and training business. And I had worked with well-known LinkedIn influencer Mike Quinn
Oh yeah.
as he was developing his higher military program, and then another program called the Digital Networking Professional Program, which
Okay.
certified people to use LinkedIn in a very meaningful way. And I became a coach for that.
Really?
And yeah, I continue to do that to this day as a course. Whenever they send me students, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And it's a 4-week course, and I really enjoy working with both service members and veterans. Oh, and military spouses, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that for a little while as part of my company, contracting with him. And then I really began to work with Annie Brock, who is the CEO of the Leader Transition Institute.
Hmm.
And Annie has a program called Changing Focus, moving from me to we.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, it's a 4-day workshop. It's free. And I'm not selling it, but I'll tell you what, it changed my life
Okay.
because I was very much, I'm sorry, moving from we to me. I said it
Yeah.
the wrong way. And,
Both ways can work actually.
yeah, 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 yeah. But, you join the military and you
Oh yeah.
become,
We.
you know,
Yeah.
it's all about we, it's all about the team. If you're a leader and you were a leader, you always want to hand that praise out to your service members. And while you could take credit for a lot of things, I assume many times you just spread that across your team.
Right.
Um, and so I did that, really enjoyed that. But as you transition to civilian life, you have to begin to stand on your own 2 feet and be a me.
Yeah.
And that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so her program really helped me figure out who I was and what I wanted to do. And as part of that, I said, I want to get back into radio. And I know I was this, highfalutin muckety muck walking around the Pentagon, right? But I didn't want to get back into kind of that high level public affairs, just grind, grind, grind. And much love to anybody who does that, by the
Yeah.
way. I wanted a radio show. I
Yeah.
wanted to get paid for playing rock and roll again, and I wanted to have some fun. And a radio station, an opportunity presented itself, a veteran who owns a radio station, and man, I got back on the air. So
Awesome.
I run my own company. I contract with a series of other companies to help them train or do public affairs, and I do a radio show.
Yeah. Awesome. You get your 4 hour shift of talking.
Oh man, I know.
Is
I
it
love
is that what it is? About 4 hours, isn't it? So
It's actually 5 hours
but
a night. It's from 7 to midnight. And
okay.
again, I get to play the best music of the 80s and 90s, which was my time.
Oh,
And
that's our time. What are you talking about?
great music from that era. I love it.
Yeah, I always joke. I posted the Bush album, the orange cover.
Uh-huh.
And I posted on Facebook about a year ago. I was like, you don't understand how epic this album is, where you could hit play and then come back an hour and a half later and you didn't miss anything. And and the glycerin and all those songs on that album. Because I remember reloading shotgun shells when I used to shoot competitively. I
Uh-huh.
was 12, 13 years old, midnight in our gun room, just racking the reloader, listening
Uh-huh.
to Come Down and all of this stuff. So I I love that era. It's so much fun. So
Yeah. It was fun. You look back at it, the simpler times, right? It's always
yeah.
simpler times, 2020.
We think it's simple. When we talk to our kids and they're like, just do this. I'm like, how do I not know how to do that? I was here when the iPhone came out. I should know all the ins and outs. And it's like,
I know. when today's kids talk about the old days and what they really mean is the 2010s, you're
Yeah.
like, no, what are you talking about? The old days.
Yeah, it's a
Jeez.
challenge. I talked to a guy last night. It's funny about the old days of the Army
Uh-huh.
and like, pre 9/11 Army and how we fought from '01 to '07 and then what the Army's become since. And not
Yeah.
culturally, just I'll talk about technology wise and how it's just drastically different and how I used
Yeah.
to get taught land nav with, I mean, we actually had like maps everywhere and protractors were everywhere. And now they're like,
Yeah.
no, we should just use the dagger. It does it for us. I'm like, dang it. Where was
Or they
that?
got a cell phone in their pocket, and as soon as
Right.
they disappear from their boss, they turn it on and
Yeah. Saying
they
that
collect their
there's
stuff.
an app that does like even better land nav than our own equipment. It's crazy how far it's come.
I
So
know.
in your I'm dying to know. I always ask people that do any kind of veteran transition stuff. Like what trends are you seeing that people should be aware of? Like, so when you're doing like LinkedIn profiling, coaching, what are some things that you're like, hey, I see this a lot, don't do this, or hey, you really should do this. Give me some points on that.
Yeah. So when I looked at LinkedIn profiles, and I do that all the time with service members, there are certain things that a lot of times they miss. And again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So the first thing is that people focus their attention on who they are today
Mm-hmm.
versus who they want to be tomorrow. And so I always tell people your LinkedIn profile is about you, but it's not for you. It's for
Right.
other people to get to know you and what you want to do. And so I tell people, look, right under your photo, put the things that you're interested in doing. If you have a title, a civilian title for the job you do, and that's what you want to do, then put it there.
Right.
And maybe put two or three if you're not sure. It's okay to do that coming out of the service because you may not know for certain exactly what you want to do. And then further down in the about section, especially for people who've been in the service a long time. Younger people have less of a problem with this because they're not as institutionalized as we are.
Ingrained. Yeah.
Yeah. We're like like the movie Shawshank. We don't know anything better than being in the machine, right? In the
Right.
institute. Um, and so I joke about us being institutionalized, but the about section, when you see a younger service member, if they were an IT guy, they're going to write, I'm an IT guy. These are my certifications. This is what I'm interested in doing. Exactly what you're supposed to do in the about section. But what I see is service members who've been in the military for a long time, they're like, oh, I was a
Proven
lieutenant.
leader.
Yeah, I was a lieutenant colonel or I was a sergeant major. I need to put the depth and breadth of my entire military experience, right? What I tell people is that's not an area for an OER or an NCOER. And so that's an area for you to say, and I always joke about the widget, right? I always tell people, look, if you figure out what it is that you want to do, and let's assume you want to be a widget maker, then talk about the experience you have in widget making.
Right.
And really, what you want to put in there is you say, "Hey, I'm Jose. I served in the military as a widget maker, and I'm experienced in it. This is the education I have in it.
Want to
I
keep doing it.
love being a widget maker. Yeah, and I save money or time or efficiency somewhere in there on widget making. I'm the best widget maker in the world.
Yeah.
I'd love to be a part of your team. Something of that sort." And older service members, I shouldn't say older, more seasoned service members
We're
are
old.
will be very uncomfortable because they think, well, if I don't tell them everything I've ever done, then they might not fully grasp how important I am or how much I know.
Yeah.
And the problem is most companies aren't looking for an executive right out of the military.
No.
And so, yes, there are exceptions, but most people are going to get a job doing something. And that's the thing that your about section should be about. And so you could have been a lieutenant colonel and commanded a battalion or, done some particular
Right.
staff job that was really important, but you're not going to get the job over a guy who comes in who was, let's say, an HR manager, right? Maybe you ran an entire HR department. But if there's a guy who was an HR manager and can express how he did HR management at the level that they're looking for an employer, they're going to get the job. Just because you commanded an HR unit doesn't make you the best candidate to be an
Right.
HR manager. And so I tell people it's not that you want to forget about, or minimize your service. It's that you want to take the skills that you picked up and learned that make you qualified and focus on those.
Yeah.
And if you focus on those in your about section, you're 1,000 levels beyond anybody else.
Yeah, I see a lot. I mean, I connect probably I send out an excessive amount of connections to people I don't know. If I see, I do searches by branch. I do like 25 Navy, 25 Air Force every single day. Send them out
Yeah.
to get guests on the podcast. That's what I want, right?
Uh-huh.
And but I notice I see a lot of things when I scroll through profiles that they've literally in their experience section
Mm-hmm.
they'll put like it's literally copy and paste of evaluation bullets, you know,
Yep.
and it's like responsible for $2.6 million of equipment with zero loss. I'm like a civilian company. I'm like I was in the corporate world before I joined the army. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I was the director of merchandise for
Mm-hmm.
for the Dallas Mavericks.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was to hire somebody and I saw some like manage a lot of equipment with zero loss, I'm like, you're not supposed to lose equipment. Like I don't like it's where my brain first goes. Like after this whole like Afghanistan withdrawal stuff aside, like we shouldn't be losing planes and helicopters. Like it, like what is the army? I know what I consider loss in
Yeah.
inventory for merchandise because like theft's a real thing, but
Right. Right.
like we should be stealing like M4s. What's going on? Like it's just my brain just gets to a whole lot of like, that doesn't make any sense. So, and I think a lot of people, at least I see this. I'd love to hear
Uh-huh.
your point of view. Is we kind of not exaggerate, but
Mhm.
we over quantify,
Yes.
like I led the invasion to Iraq. I'm like, you were an E4 in third
Right.
ID. Yes, third ID was, I think, the first unit that hit armor
Yep.
boots on the ground.
Yep.
Like you didn't lead. You weren't the first. Like, like I mean, if we're gonna get semantics here, I'm sure some Green Berets and guys that don't exist were the first ones on the ground. But like,
Absolutely.
you took part of the unit that led the invasion. Like, I think words matter,
Yes.
and how we correlate that, and as you said, going from we to me, it's that gray area, that dash, as I think it's a thing now, right? As
Yeah.
everybody's is how do you phrase that? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I agree with you 100%. So people may, some of them exaggerate, some of them just don't know how to turn military ease into civilian ease.
Yeah.
And they think the big numbers are going to impress somebody. Going back just for a second to the about section, it's not uncommon for someone to say, spent spent 30 years managing, the 10,000 person, public affairs force as a
Right.
director, blah blah blah, right? Okay, great. 30 years. So shouldn't you be retired?
Right.
As a recruiter looks at it, they're like 30 years, dude. What are you doing looking
Right.
for a middle management job when you've done 30 years worth of service? It's kind of weird.
Right.
In addition, you can scare off recruiters or employers because if you've got too many years, well, look, if I'm the assistant manager at Lowe's and you come in with 30 years of merchandising experience or logistics experience, and you walk into my store looking for a job,
It'd be a
I'm
problem.
going
Yeah.
to be thinking this good dude is going to be looking to take my job in a few months. I'm not hiring this guy.
Yeah.
So you can unintentionally intimidate people. And the truth is, I didn't spend 30 years managing the public affairs field. I spent 3 years managing the public affairs
Yeah.
field. I
Right.
spent X number of fields at a level commensurate with what I
Your
did
position.
as a
Right.
very senior person. And so I always tell people, focus on that. Focus on real numbers that make sense. Everything in your experience section, look at titles that make sense to civilians. So
Yeah.
if you were, a scout platoon leader, okay, what does that mean? Look for a title that makes sense. with civilianese. And I'm not saying that you want, again, I'm not saying you want to minimize, but you want to make it legible for a civilian who's coming
How
to
does it
your base.
correlate?
Yeah, it has to
Yeah.
correlate.
Uh,
And similarly with bullet points, number one, I always tell people, give me two sentences. What did you actually do? Like, what was the expectation of you every day? And it can't be 16 sentences. Give me two or three
right.
sentences. My boss expected me to show up at this place and do this thing throughout the day.
Right.
What was that thing?
Yep.
you know and then now you've given me a very short synopsis, and now give me two or three bullets that demonstrate how you succeeded or exceeded the goals of your boss doing that one thing.
Yeah.
And it can't be 50,000. It can't be, I was supposed to not lose a F-16 and I didn't lose an F-16. Well, you weren't, like you said, you weren't supposed to lose the F-16.
That's not part of the job description.
So great, great.
Mis-
Thank you for not losing the F-16.
I misplaced an Abrams in my backyard. Yeah, so I do that with so I was airborne infantry before I
Mhm.
crossed over to become a logistics officer. And but I heard it all the time. Oh, if you're infantry, I mean, what are you gonna do? Be a security guard? That's all you can do. And I'm like, have you ever been in the infantry? Like, it's one, it's I tell guys all the time that are prior infantry because I was a recruiter after all that. And I I try to explain to people, I'm like, well, oh, I was a squadron. I had 9 guys, right? And for at that time it was all guys. And so I can say that and not get in trouble. but um but they're all from different states. They're all from different cultures, different races, different. I mean, we were a oddly diverse group.
Mhm.
And the premise of what it is to be a squad leader is to take 9 people who are from different places, different backgrounds, different cultures, and get them to who in a lot of ways we don't agree on a lot of things like religion, sports. I mean, we're all over the place, and make
Yeah.
them join together to do one thing for a common cause.
Mhm.
Like, now how do you put that into words? Is what I tell people. Like, that's your job, is to put, like, I'm responsible for their health, welfare, and training.
Yeah.
You know, and that's my one sentence is I'm
Mhm.
directly responsible for the safety, health, welfare, and training of 9 other people.
Yeah.
And then my bullets are training. Like, we did rigorous training combat in relation to combat operations. Like,
Yeah.
that's simple. Like, combat operations is like a known term that translates. So they can be like, well, it's probably blowing some stuff up.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand. Like, you don't want to put like we did 15 JFXs. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's about the end of people like, oh, I'm an expert problem solver. I'm like, that's a subjective term, you
Right.
know, but like putting words like, hey, I pride myself in identifying problems and figuring out ways to solve them. And
Yeah.
then here's a way I did it. Like, for me, where'd it go? You know, Solve a problem. We had rounds that wouldn't eject. So I 3D
Yeah.
designed and 3D printed an extractor
Right.
for the something that didn't exist in the Army's inventory because the
Right.
guns we use the old guard are old and they don't make parts for them anymore. so
Mhm.
so I think having a tangible sentence, but then having or subjective sentence, but a tangible thing that says, look, this is a problem and this is
Yeah.
what I did to fix it. And
Yes.
that's what's really, really difficult. And and then I think the adjective, at
Mhm.
least this is my take. Again, I definitely want your take on this. Is what is your adjective of participation? I took part in, I facilitated, I organized, it was all my idea. Like, I think
Right.
those words matter um with someone who's trying to review. But I think the biggest thing, and this is what I really want to hit on, is
Yeah.
people don't know what they want to do,
Mhm.
and I can attest to that. I've seen thousands of soldiers get out, and there's the brain, and that last 6 to 8 months is like, just get out, get to the goal line, get the freaking signatures, turn in CIF, and let's go. You know,
Yeah.
and they know they have a whole bunch of leave. They're like, hey, I'll figure that out in my 60 days on leave or 9 days on leave.
Right.
And that's the biggest mistake, I think, is how do we get them to start building a LinkedIn profile and like get it going,
Yeah.
earlier. Start connecting people now, even though you're not planning on getting out for 2 more years, fine, but build that network up,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and then, and put accomplishments out there. Have that way you have 2 years of post of like things that you took part of. Like, hey, I PAO, these are all the articles that I wrote. I'm in the Army magazine. I'm in, Army Times or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you can build that background so someone can go see it. But I think
Right.
that within that, people don't understand that you don't have to know what you're doing. It's just what do you not want to be doing? I think is a
Right.
big thing. And then like for me, I got out as I'm retired in VA stuff. So like I'm financially stable enough to be able to say, hey, I can do my own business. I'm sure you can
Right.
relate.
Right.
And
Right.
but if I put consulting, which is what I do, in mind, so what is in my profile that justifies me to be a consultant?
Right.
And
Right.
I think those are the things that people need to learn to target. So what is your take on all that? If it's a
Yeah.
lot.
So, yeah. First thing, how cool is this? We both have the Army book back there.
Yeah.
The history of the Army. Very cool. Very cool. I just happened to notice that. Okay. Well, if do you allow me to go on a little bit of a rant about
Oh,
the service, the active
I,
duty?
I will hand over the soapbox. Go for
Okay. All right. Look,
it.
first thing is first. Nothing gets me angrier. And by the way, I spent a year, that year that I spent as a government civilian, I spent as an inspector general. And nothing made me angrier than a commander or a first sergeant not allowing their soldiers the time to transition. And I always used to say, you get one chance at making a lifetime recruiter out of this soldier,
Yep.
or one chance at making a lifetime detractor of this soldier, someone who will tell everyone they know, don't ever join the Army. The Army's the worst. Or a
Yep.
lifetime recruiter, someone who had a wonderful experience and that last year was something significant to them.
Yep.
And the way you do that is by allowing your service members to go through the TAP program within a year or two. Let them try it 2 years out, go through, learn some information. And you know what? Maybe they get promoted and they choose to stay in the service. So what?
Yep.
At worst case scenario, if they become a leader, now they know some information they can share with
Yep.
subordinates about the transition program. But if they're more serious about the transition, send them back a year out and let them learn some things and then allow them to take some of those classes. Now, look, I know that commanders have a tough job and they got to get things going. But we spend a lot of time bringing people in, training them, making them part of the Army, and we think about that and we think about plugging them into the system. But at the tail end, we're just like, hey, you're no longer important to me. We've got your replacement. You are no longer significant. Whatever. I want you to work till your last day to take leave. And that's why so many of the soldiers are like, I can't wait to get out. They can't even think about what they want to do. They
Right.
just looking to race toward the finish line to get the heck out of that system that is holding them back.
Yeah.
And sadly, too many commanders and first sergeants do that across the Army and don't look at the big picture, the long picture about the importance of caring for those soldiers. Now, fair enough. Again, I know that many of those commanders and first sergeants have a job to do, and I get it. But wherever possible, you should allow your soldiers. There was an instance where I was an inspector general, not naming names, but there was a service member, a staff sergeant, who couldn't leave because his battalion commander had sent his captain, his S3 captain, to some elective school, had sent the E7 to a professional development course, and this one staff sergeant was the S3 NCOIC, the only person who was doing the job. Okay, that was bad management on the part of that battalion commander and that
Yeah.
battalion sergeant major. That was their fault. And so in conversation with them, I just couldn't believe that their answer was, this is the one person. I was like, if your entire unit hinges on one staff sergeant, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You are doing it wrong.
Single point of
Uh,
failure.
yeah, single point of failure. You can't do that. Okay, so anyway, that guy had a terrible experience going out. He will be a lifetime detractor.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing nothing we can say or do that's ever going to change his mind. It's too late. So I always encourage commanders and first sergeants, battalion commanders and sergeants major, who are really those two levels are where the
Oh
rubber
yeah.
meets the road.
Oh yeah.
By the time you get to brigade, you're no longer really, active with day to day. Sure, you go to PTA every once in a while, run with the soldiers, but let's be honest, the
Yeah.
brigade level, you're no longer day to day. Now, what I'll say beyond that, right, is as you noted, it's incredibly important for service members to begin the process of figuring out what they want to do. And sometimes, like you said, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But if you go through that soul searching, and I don't mean to continue to share this, but
No, no.
the focus moving from we to me program gives you almost permission to stop and for a second begin the process of self-reflection,
Hmm.
of starting to check off the things you don't want to do. Even if you don't know what you want to do, if you can start checking off the things you don't want to do, it starts getting
Oh yeah.
smaller and smaller, and you start moving in the direction that you want to get into. And that includes people who have jobs in very broad fields, right? Infantry is one of them, but you think about HR, you think about
Oh
logistics,
gosh, yeah. There's
you
it's so
know, I
operations.
mean, yeah, operations. You got this, let's say logistics, right? You got this humongous job, and you want to get into logistics after the military. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Does that mean you want to be a forklift driver? Does it mean you want to be a warehouse worker? Does it mean you want to manage a Lowe's? Does it mean you want to be an Amazon fulfillment center manager? Does
Yeah.
it mean you want to be an operations manager at a higher level with a logistics background? We don't know if all we say is logistics.
Walmart
And
distribution
so,
center.
yeah. So, what are the
Yeah.
parts of logistics that I'm like, I would never want to do that again?
Yeah.
PAO, let me tell you, there are a whole lot of parts about PAO that I could never, or I would never want to do again. And so I started checking those off. I was like, I don't want to do that part. I don't
Yeah.
want to do that part.
It's true.
I said, and I decided broadcasting was the funnest, most fulfilling part of my career. And that's what I want to do after I get out of the service. But regardless of what field you're in, really kind of getting into the nitty gritty is what matters. And there's a way to do that, and I'll talk about that, in a little bit when the time is right. But there is a way to begin that process of discovery by engaging with people who are doing the things you want to do.
That's very true. Before I forget, you brought back to the journalism thing. So I was a recruiter.
Mhm.
So I went in. I had, we all have our. I may still have mine up here somewhere. But I had my little recruiter book that I took with me everywhere to talk to soldier or candidates, and it was like the 80% solution, and then I had on my a bigger binder like the 20%, like the if someone wants to go really into the weeds. But in that there was gosh, I forget what the name of the program was now, but it has every single job in the entire
Mhm.
every single MOS, and you
Yeah.
can break it down by and you can do this on the old transcript thing, and
Uh-huh.
but it had like if you attend this school, they have a contract or agreement, and you pursue this degree, and you went to this, I forget the joint service transcript thing,
Mhm. Yes, sir,
and
Sergeant.
but like I remember journalism was the most.
Mhm.
So if you were Army journalism, 18 years old out of high school, when you finished basic training and finished AIT,
Mhm.
University of Maryland awarded 84 hours of credit. And I was like, you could just totally punk all your friends. You're a junior in college, while they're all still doing like English 101. And
Yeah.
I was like, because all you really had left to do was some basic courses, and you had a
Yeah,
bachelor's degree.
the core
And,
classes.
and I was like, man, you could knock out get to a unit and start doing your TA after a year of time, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, knock out your Englishes and your math and your government history, and you're done. I was like, you literally have that's the fastest college degree you can possibly get is a bachelor's in journalism through University of Maryland. It's pretty funny. No one know,
Yeah.
infantry is like you get all your electives for physical fitness, and there's a couple of management courses, but it was like 17 hours. I was like, nah, that makes sense. I give them that. So, but well, before I forget,
Mhm.
anything else, you gotta the name of the podcast is So There I Was.
Mhm.
So I think the rules are you have to tell me a So There I Was story. So, and I'm sure, and you've already kind of got the sergeant major of the army, so I'm sure I've met SMA Preston when I was I think an E4 because he was what
Uh-huh.
he was what 04 to 08
Oh,
9.
04 to 08. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
So
Yeah.
because he came to Fort
Responsible
Bragg,
Sergeant Major
for,
of the Army.
formerly Fort Bragg, and
Yep.
we got so I'll have to tell a story there I was regarding him because it's funny.
Yeah.
You do live fire exercises all the time, and it's like, okay, I was a 240 machine gunner. They're like, hey, okay, here's your 800 rounds. I'm like, 800 bullets? That's like 10 seconds. Come on, and but so they're like, you have to be careful with it. And then we did one iteration. We did like all the battle drills and stuff, and then we came back, and they're like,
Mhm.
hey, the SMA's on his way. You're gonna do it again. We're like, oh, great. They gave me like 4,000 bullets, and I'm
Wow.
like, me and my ammo bearer and AG were like, this is gonna be awesome. So we had two of our 240 side by side, both with 4,000 rounds, and
Mhm.
we lit up this building. And we got back, and he was like, "That was the coolest fire I've ever seen." Like we had traces going everywhere, and what my AG was my team leader at the time. I was a young private, and he got his coin. I'm like, I want a
Yeah.
coin. That'd be cool. So I've never seen a coin before, so that was the first time I ever was introduced to coins.
Oh
So
man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, rest in peace to General Sullivan, who passed away. I don't know when this will air, but uh, when it aired, when we
yeah,
recorded this, it was
yeah,
right about when General Gordon Sullivan passed, and
saw that.
rest in peace to him. Believe it or not, my very first coin was from a four-star general who happened to be the chief of staff of the Army, Gordon Sullivan, and that was pretty cool. So coins are just so meaningful, and I still
Yeah,
have it to this day, and it's really meaningful to me that he saw this private in the corner with a big broadcasting camera and a microphone standing there trying to stay out of the way, hoping he'd even notice. And he came right over to me. He was like, "Hey, you're a broadcaster," and I was like, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You
what
want
do I
to
do
you
with
want
my
to talk?"
hands?
Yeah, he was like, "You want to talk to me?" I was like, "Yeah, I really want to talk to you. That's why I'm here." And he was like, "Oh, throw the microphone in my face. Ask whatever you want."
That's
And so it was
awesome.
great. It was great. Just the fact that he saw some kid in the corner and he took the time when he didn't have to even, acknowledge I was there. That meant the world to
Yeah,
me. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
I think those
Uh,
those coins are great. Like people, I think don't understand them. Like for me, like I have my coins on the wall over my fireplace actually.
yeah.
Um, but and I'm sure my wife will. I just got married. I'm sure she'll probably be like, we're gonna or we're getting married. Sorry, and like whenever she moves in, she'll probably like we're not gonna have that there. That's gonna go to the cave. But and we um but she asked me whenever we were dating, while we've been dating, it's like, hey, what are all these mean? I was like, they're cool, I was like, but what they really are is a introduction to a memory,
Yes.
and I think people think it's, an acknowledgement of doing something really cool or just being a part of something. I'm like, yeah, it is, like I remember getting a coin for almost getting deported from the U.S. for illegally importing munitions by accident. Long story. It's a great episode about if I ever want to make one about myself, I would do that one, But I had this coin and it's a weird looking coin. And
Uh-huh.
so, what's that one for? And I'm like, I can tell you. Let me tell you the story, because which is the whole point of this podcast is like anybody has a coin has a story.
Yeah.
And like what were you doing? Oh man, we did this live fire. Oh, we did this. Oh, I helped a guy in a rollover.
Right.
An accident on Fort Sill, which is a true story too. And like all these little things it helps. And as we get older,
Right.
when we're 80 years old, and our grandkids are in our lap, like, Grandpa, what's that coin for? So let me tell you a story. you
That's
know,
exactly right.
and it's what it is. And it's like all the awards and all the coins. The day you get to 214, and they're all listed on there. After that, they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
Unless you've got
Yeah.
something that gets you like a free parking at the airport or no or free registration on your vehicle, right? I'm in Texas. We got free registration for like as long as you have any medal at all, you get free registration.
Oh,
And
and they're great with veterans.
but aside from that, all your awards mean
Yeah.
nothing. They're stories. And I
Absolutely.
think that's the piece that people I really wish they understand of like this is the point of this is to have it so someone can say, hey, at one point, at one time in life, I did this,
Yes.
and I think
Absolutely.
it's something not to be ashamed of, you know, you know, my to be wife is reading through. I have my I Love Me book. It actually says I love me on it, which is pretty funny. and and she's like, what in the world? Like, I can't even explain this to you. It's common language in the army. And
Yeah, yeah.
she was just going through it, and she was just like reading all the, all my awards and stuff, and she has a lot of questions, and because like, I've been retired for our entire dating relationship, and so like
Mhm.
for her it's all foreign,
Yeah.
and so I think it's that's why it's important to keep those things, because
Yeah.
have like your office behind you and mine behind me, of like things where, I've got a 4 year old, well, actually today she's five today, you know like my entire career came and went, and she
Yeah.
didn't even exist. So like at one point she's gonna be a teenager and be like, Dad, what's that? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
important.
No, I'm with you. I sometimes I happen to mention I did a story on LinkedIn some time ago, maybe 2 years ago, and I mentioned that I have I was lucky. So please know I'm not trying to boast here, but I picked up about 450 coins in my career.
Wow.
And it was just kind of right place, right time, and people that were kind enough to appreciate what I did.
Yeah.
And so I was just super thankful, right? And like you said, everyone is a memory. The older I get, I don't remember every single one and that
Right.
memory. I used to know every single memory, but the absolutely the most significant ones. But I got them behind me. As a matter of fact, there's some over
Oh, that's
here, and
cool.
there's some over there, and there's some behind me that you can't see there because they're right behind me.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think some people took the message as, oh, you just like to display. First of all, my wife said the only place you'll put army stuff is in your office. So because we moved into a new house, so everything's stuffed into my very small office. But number two, I feel the same way as you. Every one of these is an opportunity to share a story with someone. And so I love where they're at. Now, and I recognize and surely have no issue with people that are like, I just threw all my awards and my coins into a box somewhere and I couldn't care
It's in the
less.
attic. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go, do things your way. But for me, these things are part of my story, and
Yeah.
they're also, they're also signs, and I'm looking left and right, but they're signs of someone who cared enough about me to
Yeah.
give me something and say thank you.
Yeah.
And so for me to put stuff in a box and ignore it, it's just kind of tough. I can't do it. But again, much love and respect to anybody who
Yeah.
feels that way and does it that way. For me, this is just how I want to honor my service.
It's,
So yeah,
it's I think just not forgetting, the
yeah,
kind of the close of all this, the spirit of this podcast is based on, um, I think we've failed to tell our story in some way,
yeah,
and I think people realizing what does that mean to them to be able to tell it. Is that putting your coins out? Rock on. If that's putting those plaques that you get from the shop off base when you
yeah,
PCS, rock on. I've got mine in my shop. I have all those plaques on display out there. You know,
yeah,
I don't have
yeah.
any wall space in my house otherwise. My guidon from when I was in command is in my living room.
Mhm.
But for me, like that was the pinnacle of my career, was of awesomeness, was to where I got to command an HHC 43 of the old guard, which is the
Right.
coolest thing in the
Oh,
world, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna put that in my living room. I want people to ask me about, like, what does
yeah,
that mean? I'm like, is it, there's a little bit of pridefulness there and a little bit of arrogance, probably, but we're all human. And but I think for me, why I started this is it's just soldiers
yeah,
get out and we have some incredible experiences, unique experiences, and
yeah,
some of them good, some of them terrible, and some of them are just flat out hilarious. And I think
yeah.
regardless of what category they fall in, if you're at the water fountain at the bank, and you're talking to co-vice president Bob, you know, and he's like, "Oh man, it's crazy! You watched the game last night?" Like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Oh, it reminded me of this one time we were doing this massive airborne operation, and my parachute didn't work, and I was free falling for a minute. How do you get my reserve? And landed on my butt and got a small concussion. It was good times, and just laughing about it. And Bob's like, they have pills for what you have, like it's like, and they're like, without meaning to, there's this culture of like judgment and shame is what I call
Mhm.
it, where, hey, Travis, you're telling the story about falling on a plane and stuff. Like, you shouldn't be laughing at that.
Yeah,
Like that shouldn't be funny. I'm like, oh, in the moment it's terrifying,
yeah.
but like as soon as you hit the ground, you wake up and your friends are there and they're like, dude, you were falling out. guy. Like,
Yeah.
and we are like just never ending stories. I had a good friend of mine who stepped on a power line in Iraq and got just, so every time we have a massive group text and it's not G rated. We're on like 15 years of this group text. Every time he talks, someone puts the Raiden like meme or GIF from Mortal Kombat, and he's like, guys, it's 2006. We're like, it's still funny. It's still funny. We don't care, but it's just like, it's our safe place to like constantly remind him, you stepped on a power line. Not only that, we did it twice on two different houses in the same night.
Oh
Like,
my God.
of all the people we had, so it's just never ending fun. And I think, but like that story for him, he probably can't tell anywhere else because it doesn't make any sense. And I think that's important for people to take their story and figure out how to tell it for their own mental health,
Right.
because if you don't, I think the tragedy is, I personally believe, I'm not a psychologist, that that's what drives veteran suicide, is that
Right.
we bottle it up, and if putting it all up in a box and put it in the attic, rock on, but don't
Yeah.
forget,
Yeah.
and and don't let it eat you away, and don't let it be a deal where like, oh man, my friend died, and then
Yeah.
now your life can't continue, and then you literally end it. And I think that's
Yeah.
the point of this is, hopefully someone hears your story of a
Yeah.
public affairs doing this, and what do we do in the Army or any branch, and we hear a story, and we're like, oh, it reminds me, and here's my story, right? And we kind
Yeah.
of like inadvertently try to one up, and
Yeah.
so that's my thing,
Yeah.
and the hope of this podcast, and it's in its very early days of
Yeah.
episodes. But well, Jose, man, this has been a lot of fun. I'm sure you and I could sit here all day long,
Yeah.
but we actually have real work to go do. So, but I really appreciate it for those out there listening. If you're interested in get a hold of Jose, I'll put his information, his link, in his bio stuff in um, the description, and definitely getting a hold of him on having questions about stuff. He's very responsive to things, and he mentioned Michael Quinn,
Mhm.
great guy out there with higher military, and I talked to oh my gosh, not Matt Best. Oh my gosh, just my brain just, anyways. Yeah, Matt Quick. Yeah, sorry. There's Michael Quinn and Matt Quick. How the M and Qs are killing me. So, but they're both very very good with helping veterans, kind of work through that process
Mhm.
of transition. So, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to me. I'll get you in touch, or Jose himself. And Jose, man, we'll look forward to it. Maybe get you back on here a few months, and we'll follow up and see how things have changed. Sound good?
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to be back anytime you want me to. And like you said, I really encourage our service members out there to share their story with each other because we understand each other in a way that no one else does. And when you do share those stories with civilians, if they don't understand, that's okay. They really don't understand. The civilian sector is different, but always fall back on your buddies. There's an entire veteran community online, and LinkedIn is one of those places where you can go, and if you see a veteran, man, if you send them a DM, 9 times out of 10 they're going to respond to you.
Yeah.
And they don't have time to talk to you, they're going to point you to somebody else. But we are not going to let you sit out there by yourself. So my DMs are always open to anyone who wants to reach out to me through the transition process, or someone who just needs an ear to listen to their
Yeah.
story or their issues. I'm available and proud to help.
That's awesome. Well, appreciate it again. And if you're new, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.